Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to HR Middle East Chat. Brad Boyson, Executive Director, SHRM. I'm here with my colleague, Anas.
Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Anas Al-Mari and I'm the Director of Training at Focus Social Academy, and today we are not at Focus Academy premises. We are
at the JW Marriott in Dubai, in Business Bay. We were just attending a Federal Authority for HR event that they do on a regular basis. Speakers from Philips talking about many different things related to HR.
Fascinating.
Obviously, Philips is an extremely well-known organization talking about their HR practices. Before we get into our discussion on the employee experience, what was your takeaway from the speakers today?
Apart from LinkedIn?
Well, tell us what you mean, Anas. Tell us.
So, first of all, the CEO of Philips started with a little bit of telling us about the celebration and the legacy of the last 125 years of Philips. And then the HR director, the group HR director for MENA and Turkey, took on the stage and spoke about very interesting concepts for such large corporate to adapt for the sake of employee engagement and for continuous improvement and for as well as hiring. Pre to this session, like I went to LinkedIn and social media and I searched about the speakers and their profiles, and interestingly enough, I found out that Teresa, the Group HR Director, has written on her profile that if you are looking for a job, you probably need to apply either online or she advised to join Philips Group on LinkedIn.
The group, yeah. I'm surprised more organizations don't take advantage of that. How many times do you see someone's profile in HR on LinkedIn where then they say, you know, I'm not taking any sort of connections from people looking for a job? Why don't you create the channel to send them to your website, to send them to your group page like that? And it just, you know, and that directly relates to our topic today, which is the employee experience. You know, what is your impression when you find someone online on LinkedIn and they are involved in recruiting or the head of HR for an organization, and the first message they're giving to you is this?
Yeah.
It's just so full credit to Philips, you know, and it's obviously a huge global organization. We're just speaking from the experience of the people who are talking today.
Yeah. I think it's unfair for me because I'm occupying more than half of the screen. So if you can join a little bit.
Which one are you looking at? Facebook?
Facebook.
Yeah.
So we're both on Facebook. Hi there, Facebook, and also here on Periscope. So to be just unfair, I think this is much better. So my takeaway is, number one is LinkedIn and its significance. It's very well known for millions of people that people will check you out there before they recruit you or shortlist you. And I asked her, you noticed that after her speech, I went and I asked her personally, like, on from a scale from 0 to 5, how much do you rely on LinkedIn instead of a CV? And she said, we don't look at CVs anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not the only decision maker for shortlisting people. She said, first is LinkedIn, and then probably the CV.
Yeah, and I was also fascinated by their discussion on, you know, how they're looking at promoting women within the organization. And keeping track of the statistics, you know, and she made the really good point about, you know, that it's fairly balanced as up until you get to a point of, say, the director level. And then once you're at the director level, there's a huge drop-off in the number of women moving to the next level. And so this is something that they're very aware of. They're creating metrics on it. And I really like the fact that they went to the source. They literally went to the women in the organization and they said, why? Why is this happening? What is the reasons? And they came up with, you know, some fairly things that you might understand is the personal choice. But that's, you know, again, to our discussion and the professionalism of human resources, this is the future of HR. It's not going by your gut instinct, but by actually doing the research, looking at evidence and saying, why is this happening? You know, we could all have opinions. You could have an opinion. I could have an opinion. But professional human resources says, let's get the facts, at least to the best of our ability. Let's find out why this is happening. And this is separating the better organizations from the average or poor performing organizations.
I couldn't agree more. And more of what also she mentioned, that I really like that the fact that the CEO said, I have an open door policy, and I don't have a fairly closed office, and everyone is welcome. And he was saying to the fact that sometimes I don't have time to do to get my job done, which is this is also it tells what kind of environment
global organizations and best practices. You know, these things we can all learn from that. And I think, you know, at the beginning he mentioned that you know, they want to be a local organization everywhere.
Yeah, this is also
again obviously a very mature global. You know, they understand their marketplace, and those are all the right things to do and say. You know, as if you're trying to be global, you have to be local wherever you are in the world.
Exactly.
So
they say think globally and act locally.
That's an original expression, yeah. So our core topic today, everyone, is the employee experience.
Employee experience.
The employee experience. And it's a term that may not be too familiar to this region. You and I are working and doing a judging and awards at the end of this year. And the awards are called the employee experience. So it's one of those topics that people working in HR and social media should be aware of. So let's start with, you know, when we talk about employee experience, what do you think of when I make reference to you of that? What is your takeaway? What is the meaning of employee experience?
It would immediately reflect back on like 8 years ago when the HR and operation manager of a company I worked for said, you are my first customer and we have to treat you very well so you can treat our customers really well.
Right.
So this is what, in a nutshell, what is an employee experience.
Very true, and it comes from this idea of a customer experience. So long before we were focused on anything called the employee experience, let's say we were focused on customer experience, and the foundation of this, we come, you know, if you look at agrarian, industrial, industry, this idea of products, you know, in societies, building things, and we've kind of moved into doing things and providing services. So the mindset that's changing here is one that's talking about, let's treat the service like we treat a product. Let's treat it, when you have a product, when you buy a car, when you work with an Apple iPhone, it's a tangible thing, right? But the interaction with it is an experience. And so rather than just do that with products, let's do that with services. And providing the service of recruiting employees and making the workplace experience as fruitful, as beneficial as possible is a change in mindset. Some people might say it's just the similar words talking about a different thing, but the idea is really to focus on changing the mindset. And it comes back to a bit of a debate between, you know, who are you accountable to? And the traditional business industrial mentality is customers are always right. Right? Customers first. This mindset of employee experience is rooted in the idea that no, your employees come first. What do you think about that?
Well, it is, because if you are happy inside your company, this is definitely going to reflect on the experience of the customers.
Absolutely.
And who's our king. And you've been, like, you know, we were chatting on the way to the hotel about this, and I mentioned an example where you sometimes go to a cafe or a restaurant and the management doesn't treat the employees well, and you can feel it immediately in the hospitality that there is a complete disengagement between the employees as well as the management. So it's absolutely crucial that I treat my frontliners and I invest in them so they can treat our clients really well, and then we will retain them.
On so many levels, it's common sense, and especially when you're talking to HR people. They often don't need to be sold on this. You know, employees come first. But from a business point of view, this connection, this cause and effect relationship, that if you treat your employees well, they're going to treat your customers well, is something that still gets debated quite a bit. Is some people say customers first, some people say employees first. In some ways, it's a false argument because obviously there's a relationship, but what is the cause and effect relationship? And the trend is increasingly, and a really strong advocate for this movement is someone like Richard Branson in the UK. He is an advocate that says, you treat your employees well, they're going to treat your customers well. That's what we're talking about in terms of the employee experience. But the change is creating it from an HR point of view, is creating a mandate where often it's the HR team is accountable for the employee experience the same way operations or customer service are accountable for the customer experience. And that's a very different mindset, especially for HR people and people who've had experience with poor HR teams or functions.
You mentioned a very interesting example, which is Richard Branson and Virgin, and you can feel it. Like he treats his employees like friends, or like it's beyond that, and so much of his treatment and the way he managed his top team and the frontliners, especially the stewardess and the cabin crews, it's all on social media, and you can feel that this is very down to earth, and it reflects the moment you get inside any Virgin store, you can feel that vibe.
It's a different culture,
right?
And as it relates to social media, think about how things have changed. A lot of organizations had this employee-first approach for many years, many decades even. But now with social media and places like Glassdoor.com and even LinkedIn, your experience as a potential employee or current employee is being documented. Your experience is being shared in the broader community. And that's becoming a resource, kind of like TripAdvisor. What's it like to work at this organization? Well, I'm going to go online and I'm going to do some research and I'm going to investigate, and we're going to use some of the social tools to find out what's it's like to be an insider. What's it like to, what are the promotional opportunities? What are the learning opportunities? And it really makes an important point about this idea of employee experience, because the ultimate experience is learning. The ultimate experience is education. And so this whole movement is sort of directly linked with this idea of education, growing, and development. And for HR people, it should be something that we embrace, because we obviously believe in the importance of the person. And education, learning, and development are the foundation of organizational growth.
I have a couple of points to comment on. First is, how can we use social media to have that an insider view, which I will come later on. And the second thing is your last point, where why people would leave companies, and there's so much research. You at SHRM have done so much research, why people leave their own companies, and I believe number one reason was their bosses.
Yes, usually.
And the second one is there is no career development.
Right.
And when we conduct Dubai Career Clinic and we ask people why you're going to change your job or why you're leaving this job, and they will tell you, because of my boss. And they will add to that, they're not letting me to grow inside the company.
Right. And even before that, if you narrow the question down as to why do people leave in the first month or the first 3 months or during their probationary period, always in the top three, often number one is the reason of not having a good first experience with the organization. They come into the organization, there's no orientation, there's no induction, or it's very poor. The organization just sort of says, here's your desk, here's your workspace, go to work. And, comfort. You think about the things you do in your life when you travel somewhere, all of the things that you do to try and make sure that you're comfortable when you get there. The organization, and it's most organizations today do an orientation or induction, but it doesn't change the professionalism or quality of that experience, and that's what we're talking about when we get into this employee experience movement.
So allow me please to go back to the first point, which is how social media have transformed and a little bit disrupted and I'm using few buzzwords in here, which really is the real case. Like social media have literally changed. It's exactly like the TripAdvisor for the hospitality.
Yeah.
So I myself, and I recommend most of the time that go and ask existing employees, and even better, someone left the company.
Yeah.
So how would I know someone who left working for that company?
Absolutely. Word of mouth. It's the power of word of mouth, the respect given to word of mouth.
Yeah. And how do I reach out to those people?
Yeah.
It's very easy. Go to LinkedIn, put the company name, put the country in your advanced search criteria, and then put the past company is, let's say, Philips. And then go and ask those people who show up, what do you think of this? Or ask a general question, and then you would see what you are exactly looking for.
Yes.
Your answer is just being gifted for you.
Right.
And this is one of the best examples. How can I get, and never ever rely on one person review, or I need to get 3 probably to 5 within, could be from someone someone I replaced in the same role, someone in a little bit higher management, someone down the line if it's there, or someone even from another department, and I would ask, what do you think of Brad who works in that department? Or I would make it generalized regardless of the people.
Yeah.
So I'd be more there's no bias, and I would get sometimes people don't like to talk about people, but they would tell you in general, and it's obvious, and then you would reflect on that person.
And that's the change that we have with social media. I was at an event last week where I was asked a question about leadership and how it's changing, and to an extent it relates to what you're talking about, is that leaders in the past, they could control the flow of information.
Exactly.
It was top down, it was one way. And whether it's governments, whether it's organizations, we're living in a world of two-way communication. And some leaders are better at it than others. And those that think that it doesn't exist are, they're compromising their strength as a leader. If they're in denial of it, that they have to engage their stakeholders in a two-way dialogue, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are, constantly putting yourself out there into social media, but it does mean that there's an expectation from the stakeholder that it's going to be a two-way discussion at some point. And this includes the hiring process, that it's not about just you, the big organization, give me a chance. It's about, well, I'm going to interview you, the organization. I'm going to do due diligence before I come to the interview, and I expect more respectful treatment. And there's no doubt about it that social media plays a large part in that changing balance of power.
I agree with you, and if I may add that also a hack for a review on a certain company.
Yeah.
Just go and ask people, post on LinkedIn, post on Facebook, and post on and tweet and hashtag the company and ask, and you will definitely get a response back.
But to your point, always get more than one source.
Yeah.
That's really
more than
really
source, more than a review, and then make your own judgment.
Right.
Because you have no idea of the other person, what is their intention. Maybe to push you away from the company, or it's just them being negative, or they might know that person at certain experience, which is not could be this is the norm. It depends, but at least you would get the vibes and some hints about that company.
Excellent points in us, yeah. And a large part of this movement towards the employee experience tour, is this change in the service culture itself. And again, we often talk about the uniquenesses of technology in Silicon Valley, how it's changing business. And it's fair comment to say you go from products, tangible things, to services, to experiences, and now we talk about the shared economy. This idea that maybe I don't need to buy a car. maybe what I'll do in the future is with driverless cars, I'm just going to call an Uber car, a driverless car, and it's going to get me from where I am to where I need to be. And everything's about sort of using it as you need it rather than owning it. You know, we tried to own things. And there's definitely, I'm not saying this applies to everything in the economy, but there's definitely a large and growing part of the economy, the shared economy, and this idea of the employee experience fits into that because you're changing the relationship with the employee from employer to employee to sort of more of a partnership, more of a, we talked about this before, this sort of freelancer mentality of contract work, of consulting work. And more work's moving in that direction. And how do you make sure you get the best freelancers? How do you make sure you get the best consultants? Well, you have to analyze their experience as they enter into your organization, why they contribute, you know, why they're more engaged, and why they would return or recommend other people to work for your organization. The act of doing this and measuring it the way you'd measure customer satisfaction puts a much higher level of responsibility on HR and the organizations to be more in touch, more in tune, more aligned with your potential talent.
Yeah, absolutely. I have two notes in here, Brad. The first one is the HR director, Therese, when she said, now we are in a very much of an environment who welcomes and also encourages feedback.
Right.
And you could read her facial expression and body language about, like, you know, she was very happy to say that.
Well, to add to what you're saying, she was very candid too. She said, you know, at first she was uncomfortable with that idea.
Yes.
But even like myself, when I'm asked to tell my story where I had an experience with feedback that was highly constructive, if this is an experience, you have that experience where you get some information from feedback that you would not have gotten otherwise, and it allows you to adjust what you're doing in a positive way. It's a win-win-win.
Can you read that? Yeah.
Fascinating discussion. It's Dr. Peter, I think.
Okay, Peter. Thank you. By the way, his latest article got featured at the Entrepreneur Middle East magazine. Congratulations on that.
Congratulations, Mabruk. So shared economy, you know, this idea of moving from just services to experiences and having an understanding of what the experience is. It's abstract thinking in many ways because you, the employer, you, the HR, have to say, what is our end goal here? What is our experience that we're trying to create for our employees? And that's where the trend is really starting to take place right now around the world in the better organizations, to the point that some organizations are actually sort of breaking off, and some of them are going to this extreme of saying, we have no HR, we're getting rid of HR, and we're going to create a division that focuses on the employee experience. To me, it's probably still HR, you know, with a different name. But to be fair, the change or the strategy and mission that they're giving this team is to say, what is our mission statement? What is our vision statement? That's your job description. Think about what I just said. HR, the team. No longer are we the policy police enforcing rules and saying what you cannot do, cannot do, cannot do. Take the HR team and say to them, your number one responsibility as HR is to take our mission statement, take our vision statement, take our values, and champion it every day. Everything that you should be doing as it relates to your job function is enforcing and empowering people as it relates to our mission statement. That is a huge change. And one of the leaders in this space is Airbnb.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Thank you. So please tell us.
Well, Airbnb very famously went public, I think over a year ago. I still see the article being forwarded and shared in different social media, where the CEO said, we're getting rid of HR. You know, we're getting rid of it. In essence, the premise is that you push whatever HR did or does into the front lines. You make the managers take that responsibility over. But as part of that, who's going to be sort of the champion of culture? Often that's the CEO. Often that's the executive management team. But what we see, and you know, Airbnb actually created a job title for, I won't say head of HR. You know, it's tempting to say that, but their head of people operations is called the chief employee experience officer. So that's how far they've
Nice.
gone, right? is to rebrand the head of the people function as the chief employee experience officer.
So I'm a part of a company which that's on my entrepreneurial side.
Yes.
Which is very similar to the business model of Airbnb. And
Right.
tonight I promise you to recommend the boardroom to
Yeah.
to adapt that. Yeah, I really like it. And like what are other examples? Like, isn't this the Google's mentality, Brad?
I think to a degree, Google, but I don't know that they would necessarily be the ones that are sort of at the bleeding edge of this idea. I think the Airbnbs are at the bleeding edge. They're the most famous because they're the most successful organization in this, and it was intimately related to the organization when it started. Is they didn't want to get into sort of a traditional HR ivory tower and policy policing, and they had a very deliberate strategy. So what a lot of this comes back to a very basic idea of sort of a chicken and egg question. And HR people are notoriously bad for doing things because other organizations do it. They're doing things because
It's in Google.
yeah. Well, no, that might not be a bad thing. Is benchmarking against other organizations, but the idea that this is what other organizations, we have to copy them. But when you're a leader in your industry, when you're a leader in your profession, you don't copy other people. You literally say, what do we need for us?
Yeah.
And that's the idea, and it comes back to the classic expression by Dr. Stephen Covey: begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And all of these progressive practices, from the balanced scorecard to what we're talking about in terms of employee experience, all come from that central idea. Begin with the end in mind. What's your end goal? And some organizations are going so far as to restructure or structure their organization towards that end goal. And if that end goal is customer satisfaction, how do you design your HR function based on the goal of customer satisfaction? So you're starting with your end goal and working your way back to how you design your policies and procedures. Rather than starting with this idea behind a computer, we need a policy on this, we need a policy on this, we need a... They're two fundamentally different ways of sort of structuring the organization, and the employee experience is no different. What is your goal when it comes to the employee experience? Is it retention? Is it top talent? Is it service? Are you in hospitality? You have to know what your end goal is first, and then based on that, how are you going to design your HR organization or processes to support that? Not to enforce that, but to support it. And it's a shift in mindset.
From policing to empowering and to engaging.
And the balanced scorecard started this many years ago. If you look at the balanced scorecard in terms of the 4 original sort of pillars or perspectives of the balanced scorecard, you had learning and development, you had operational systems, you had customer satisfaction, and you had financial performance. These are the 4 pillars of the balanced scorecard. It starts with L&D. Right? It literally starts. It's a business case that's made from the point of view, if you develop your people, if you invest in your people, if you give them learning and development opportunities, they're going to develop better systems and processes. You have better systems and processes, you're going to have more satisfied customers. If you have more satisfied customers or stakeholders, you're going to have better financial performance. I don't pretend that's the balanced scorecard in 2 sentences.
That's an interesting way of putting that into the strategy and overall growth of a company.
And leading organizations think that way. They need sort of an agile process of strategy development, and that's one of the reasons why the balanced scorecard is advocated so strongly. But the point I'm really focusing on is this idea that it starts with the people. It starts with developing the people. Developing the people develops the organization, and developing the organization has the residual benefit of satisfying customers and satisfying financial stakeholders.
Yeah, it comes to my mind, I'm quoting you here, at one of our sessions, probably a couple of months ago, when you say employees are not the assets of a company. every day you hear it on the radio. Some company says, "Where are our employee," in their advertising. They
Right,
say
right.
our employees is our biggest asset.
Right, right. And just to restate what I said earlier, and a lot of people disagree with what I'm saying because they've locked on to this idea that let's speak finance, let's tell the finance people that your building is dead, your automobiles, your technology, these are dead assets. Your people are your living assets, and therefore they're the most important assets. But when you really look at the idea of what is an asset is something the organization owns. And do you really want to be called an organization's most valuable asset as an employee? We've allowed ourselves to use the language of finance and try and speak in that language when perhaps it's actually doing us a disservice, you know. And so some more progressive thinking is saying, no, you know, the employee is the biggest source of wealth creation for an organization. And if you think of an employee that way, you're much more like, you know, an asset. The organization says, well, it's an asset. We can decide when you start, when you finish, how much you get paid, you know, whether or not you're going to get promoted. But when you really want to look at the employee as a wealth generating, I'll call it resource, that's more valuable than an asset. An asset is dead. You know, it's not a living organic thing. And so there's still a lot of pushback to that because people in HR are still trying to convince people in finance to change finance in a way that accommodates human resource thinking, but they're not going to do that.
Interesting. I believe, like so many people, on the other hand, that they would support this idea, and I'm one of them. Like, you know, they are not an asset. They are, like what you mentioned, and I just wrote that down. I will quote you from now on. They are a source of generating resources.
And you look at other sources. Organization could have patents. It could have intellectual property. It could have assets. You know, it could own property. It could own locations that are very unique. But at the end of the day, what has the ability to add the most value to the organization? It's the people.
Interesting. So, Brad, let's say I'm listening to you and like, you know, to this show later on or right now, and I say, okay, I like the idea of employee engagement. So where do I start from? Let's say I am an SME in Dubai, because SMEs form more than 80% of the GDP of Dubai. How do you start? Let's make it practical and break it down.
I like that, you know, and I think if you're looking at engagement as opposed to satisfaction, one, you should use a survey. It's a measurement, you know, a survey tool. A survey is like any form of measurement, and make sure that it's an engagement survey, not a satisfaction survey. And because an engagement survey is going to ask different questions. I would recommend that you use a standardized engagement survey, meaning one that's offered by professional service firms that do engagement surveys for many organizations. The downside is that's going to cost you more. The upside is it's more than likely validated, right? That's important. It's scientifically validated, but it allows you, your results, to compare to other organizations that you're benchmarking against. If you create your own engagement survey, which is perfectly fine, how do you validate it? Well, you have to test it out on your own organization. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not valid. Maybe you're double counting or triple counting the same thing, and you're not measuring something else that's equally important. So don't reinvent the wheel. Find a measurement tool that's already been validated, one. Two, ideally use one that's standardized, used by other organizations so that you can compare. And the professional service firms will do that. If you hire their services, they will give you a report that shows where you are on each sort of metric or criteria, and you can select your competition, and then you'll be able to see the gaps between where you are compared to your competitors. Much better way of strategically trying to improve the situation. I guess the last step is there are some organizations, professional service firms, again, that offer things like competitions to be, you know, win a competition for your region, for your country, as either great employer or best employer, employer by choice, all of these sort of different categories. And while those are, you know, commercial activities for the consulting firms, they do at least for the organizations participating, give them an opportunity to sort of, well, this is a competition. Let's see what we have to do to either be competitive or be successful. And often people are motivated by these stretch goals that are competitions.
Interesting. So those are the ingredients, let's say, for like, where do I start when it comes to employee engagement?
Mm-hmm.
And here I would like also to mention the awards by the company of by the name International Awards. It's going to be here, I believe, later this year in October.
I believe October,
and,
yeah.
and the name is Employee Engagement Award. It's really worth it that you go and check the website and you see your company. You could benefit in both ways. You either can learn from those guys who are the best when it comes to employee engagement, or you could be the company itself that could be a winner, and this will add up to your credibility and attract the best talent out
Sorry,
there.
just one correction. Their awards are the Employee Experience Awards. You said engagement. You said
Employee Experience
The
Awards.
Employee Experience Awards, October this year. We're participating as judges.
Yeah.
And we're going to communicate with our stakeholders in the region to choose to participate, because it's a very professional organization, very professional. And what I really liked about the judging in this process was it was structured, it was systematic, and to a degree it was transparent. Because very transparent. And all too often we're used to different awards programs here where you're actually getting an award because you participated in an event. You were a vendor, you were a presenter, you sort of and along with that you get an award. I prefer a much more open, if you will, competition, and this is right up our area. Employee Experience Awards. It's something that we can support, as SHRM or SHRM, and we're really excited about getting this sort of way of thinking into the culture of the region in Middle East, North Africa.
I absolutely agree on that, and it's also worth mentioning that yesterday yourself and I were judges at the International Business Excellence Awards, and we were speaking of experience. It's really worth it trying to be either as a judge or as an entry, for different categories. So check that out.
Well, I can't speak for the organizations you saw as a judge, but for me, I am always impressed by the quality of at least intentions, if not execution, in this region that we just don't know about. All of us work in our own organizations and we focus somewhat, if not exclusively, on internal, inward-looking issues. But if you allow yourself to look at what different organizations are doing in the region, and I do mean the region, we had companies there from Turkey, we had from Malaysia,
Australia, UK,
it was all over, and
Sri Lanka,
and we need to do that better, especially as HR practitioners, is see what other organizations are doing. Because what other organizations are doing, to a certain degree, is part of the proof or evidence that we should be using when we make a business case within our organization to change. We're so used in HR saying, we should change because this is the right thing to do. You should do this because these are people and you need to do the right thing. When we talk about employee experience, when we talk about evidence-based HR, what we're saying is let's move away from that sort of emotional justification and let's try and make decisions more on facts. Some people don't like to hear that because they see the human element being taken out of it. But if you're doing these things right with good intentions, it's actually the opposite that happens, because you're able to see the elements that are more human, more clearly, more transparently, and perhaps in a more structured way. We saw organizations from UAE that are doing great things in terms of talent development, great things in terms of customer experience, great things in terms of leadership development, and all of us should know more about that. So that's one of the reasons why these awards programs are beneficial to either participate in as an organization or even as a judge to learn about what's happening in the region. But sharing the, for lack of a better word, the best practices is something that we all should be doing better.
Absolutely. You have Any more points to share and highlight?
Well, I think the last point on this sort of employee experience is this focus on the front end of the experience, and that's something called the candidate experience. The candidate experience. So, if we look at the employee experience as everything from when a person is considering joining the organization to when they leave, a subset of that is the candidate experience, and I think that's a much newer concept that's coming into the marketplace. And we're having competitions, for example, in the United States for the candidate experience, the Candidate Experience Awards. And part of the reason that's so important, and I'll give you a really simple example. Think about first impressions. Think about when you go to a new restaurant and the service is terrible. You know, what are you going to do with that experience?
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
It's going to stick in my mind, even if they excel every single time afterwards, if I gave them the second chance to go and visit that place.
Right. Think about the same experience when you go into an organization for a job interview. And let's say you have a terrible interview. The person is disrespectful, they get your name wrong, they haven't reviewed your background, they ask you, did you bring a CV because I don't have one of yours with me. How do you feel about joining that organization?
Yeah, it happens. It happens.
Of course it happens. How do you feel about your...
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And statistics show upwards of 80 to 90% of people with a bad candidate experience will actually make their decision at that point without further consideration to not work for the organization.
Yeah.
Flip it the other way. If you have a great candidate experience, maybe the organization's okay, but the experience you have as a candidate is exceptional. What are the chances that you're going to move through the process? What are the chances? And it's not just about an interview. That's sort of the easy point.
Yeah.
But that candidate experience can be everything from, where's your office located? You know, we're in Dubai here, and I know organizations that are moving from one location to another because the traffic's too difficult.
Yeah.
Right? How about in terms of the work environment itself? So parking is one. The work environment itself, do you have windows? Do you have natural lighting? Do you have amenities around your workplace?
Exactly. Thank you very much. This is an important as well.
This is all part of the candidate experience, which is a subset of the employee experience. And so these are things that HR departments leaders should be thinking about in terms of marketing and branding their organization. And what organizations are doing, and there's consultants now who are acting like mystery shoppers. They're going into organizations with the organization's permission, and they're saying, audit us. Go through as a candidate and tell us about how we do with the candidate experience. How are we at responding to you as a candidate? How are we at interviewing you as a candidate? How are we at onboarding you as a candidate? How are we at inducting you as a candidate? You have measurement points along all of these steps, and make it better. Because it just, that whole idea of first impressions, it's all based on that. And as I said to you at the beginning when we started this program, in the top 3 reasons why people leave in the first weeks or months of in the probationary period, if they choose to leave, it's because they're not comfortable. In short, they're not getting a good first impression, and they choose to leave. And organizations need to do better. They need to think about this, especially when you're dealing with talent. And my definition of talent doesn't just mean anyone. It means who are those people who other organizations want? Who are those people that if you lose in your organization, that's going to have a negative consequence on this?
Interesting. So why don't we, I'm asking you because you're the executive director of HRME, and there's no one more eligible to bring such a concept, the candidate experience, to our region. And there is, I believe, no better place to start with bringing such experience internationally into a very cosmopolitan city other than Dubai. So we have the perfect environment for that. Like, why don't we start bringing this concept and jumping to the next level of the employee experience.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think it starts with just sort of educating our stakeholders as people in our network, whether it's HR, social media, people concerned about the people practices within organizations, just educating them about the importance. And as we had in this discussion here, at a certain level, it's so much common sense. Mm-hmm. But then you have to create a structured process to measure that common sense, to try and improve upon it. And that's the candidate experience. It's not as old as the employee experience, but if you can't turn a candidate into an employee, if you can't convert them, the employee experience is irrelevant.
Yeah. How about also bringing this as probably a judging criteria or a category at the employee experience hours?
Well, we'll see. You know, I haven't seen all of the different categories that they're doing. I'm optimistic that it might be something that they've already incorporated, but definitely that's something we'll give feedback on in terms of a subset of the employee experience, the candidate experience.
I believe we're disconnected on Periscope, but we are still live on Facebook. Do we have any questions, Dipti, on our hashtag HRMEChat?
No, nothing triggered.
And here I cannot see any questions from our respected viewers. It's, I believe it's time to wrap up and time to say goodbye till next week. I would like to remind you that this weekly chat is free, obviously. We don't charge people for that. And last week we started this initiative where we are giving some perks for our viewers. So yours was 15% discount.
You have one? You have one today? Because if not, we can do it again.
15% discount on the membership for.
Yeah, the offer still stands. If anyone is watching this now, either live or recorded, mention today's date. You know, today's date is May 19th. Tell us the name of the broadcast. You know, we're doing employee experience, and send me an email, and we will then send you a discount to join SHRM SHRM. My email again, brad.boyson@shrm.org. brad.boyson@shrm.org. We'll give you a discount on a 1-year membership with SHRM.
Interesting. So my perk this week is I'm conducting on Saturday a 6 hours career development and job search strategies. It's a very unique model that Shane Phillips, my mentor and coach, has developed, and I also built into that and added the social media element into it and my own techniques into that. So we are doing it for 6 hours at Focus Social Academy, and I'm giving away a 25% discount if you haven't registered already and you're a job seeker or you're someone who's considering a change either vertically or horizontally. That's the the must go. I'm sound like a salesperson, but because I'm very much involved in this. So I cannot really recommend it other than more. So it's 25% discount, and it's really worth it. It's also a money back guarantee. So because myself, when I used to go to a lot and invest in a lot of training back in the days, and I still do it till this very moment. Like sometimes I'm a little bit hesitant when it comes to investing a lot of money in a
Sure.
training program.
Yes.
So what I have done, I say this is 100% money back guarantee, and some of them said, okay, how about if I attend the whole 6 hours or the 5 days and other courses, and I say I didn't benefit, like someone you might have some that person. Well, we're not. We are a little bit smart, so we say if you continue to listen and attend more than an hour, which means that you probably getting benefit out of that. So
Right.
This is how we guarantee our money back guarantee for people attending our courses.
Nice gesture, and Anas, you're building a wonderful reputation in the region for your knowledge in the area of social media and job hunting and LinkedIn. So it's something that people should definitely consider.
Thank you very much. And there's the weekend. We all can sniff it. It's a couple of hours ago or 1 hour, or some people already started their weekend. I would like to wish you a very pleasant weekend, and please keep your suggestion flowing on HRMEChat as the hashtag. We're on Facebook, we are on all social media platforms, and we would like to hear from you your feedback and your experience, and probably how we can do this show better, or you know someone that you would like to recommend to be one of our guests, because there's a very interesting and fascinating line of guest speakers who will be joining us. Could be before Ramadan or could be after Ramadan. It depends on our guests' availability. Please suggest and have a nice weekend. Thank you.
Until next week, everyone. Goodbye.